Welcome back. We have good and bad news because in the meantime, when we were working on the interior, Diego from the Underbody shop was here to look into the framework and look at the chassis legs because he's going to be the guy who's going to try to repair and save the legs. So that's part of the good news because he told us that it can be savable, which we'll see after. And the bad news is that we're going to have to be removing this engine, which is the main priority or the job in this video, which is kind of sad, but true that we have to do this. But we're gonna start moving on the top and also the bottom so we can access more, and then we'll see from there. So first we're gonna start by removing this frame, which is also damaged here. So we're gonna start by removing this and then also this kind of frame on both of these sides. And I don't know why, but for all of this, they have 4 different bolt sizes. So what we didn't see while taking this off, that there's a little cable behind here or a wire, so we're gonna have to unclip this now and then we can take this off. So next up, we're gonna take off this section for the intake, which is this clip down on both sides. We just squeeze it here and then pull it out. So now after removing this brace, we can now see that there's a little bit more damage, which we also saw before. But if we take a look at the front, we can see that it's definitely deformed. And this is due to it being aluminum, because aluminum gets bent more easily. Because BMW, as they get newer, they want to make them more, they want to make them lighter because there's new tech, so that makes them heavier. So they kind of have to get more weight savings on different materials, so they use aluminum, which bends easier and also is in some situations harder to bend back. For something like this, you can maybe do it because it's just a little hump and not completely like cracked open and bent. So this can maybe be savable, but it's just riveted in. So we might just take off the top shell and then switch that out, but that's something we'll see afterwards. And then these are on both sides ECUs for the engine, and we'll also take a look in these, pop them open, see what we're going to do, if we're going to take them out completely or just disconnect the wires. And this is just clipped in, and as you can see, there's a couple wires which run all the way into the engine and also back with this entire harness. So we're going to take a look into that now to see what we're going to do, if we're going to take it out completely or just disconnect it. So we just took a quick look at it, and we now decided that we're going to take this entire thing off and not take every wire off which runs into the engine, because we have a lot of room in the front. Since we're going to pull the engine out to the front, we're just going to take this off because it's just held in with 2 or 3 screws on the bottom. So we're just going to disconnect it from the harness here, and then we should be able to take it out with the engine. So also what we just noticed as we were looking at this entire intake filter box, we noticed that this little hose, or whatever you want to call it, is not on correctly. It should be more towards down here. So we're guessing that the car, when it got serviced or whatever, that when it was at BMW, I guess, they took out the filter and cleaned it or put a new one. That not just because it's BMW and it's a main dealer or whatever that they do it better. As you can see, they probably put it on wrong. If it was the dealer, we don't really know, but probably was. They don't always do everything right. And as you can see on this side, this little flap is behind here. So this side is on correctly, but this side is just on, like, kind of on the edge, so I don't really know if it even is on correctly. So next up, we're gonna take off the engine cover and then also take off the filter boxes here real quick, and then also loosen the bolt on the bottom, take the harness out which connects it to the ECU here on both sides, so we have more room. And also when we're taking parts off like these, which may be the same, obviously not for the airbox filters, but just to be safe, we're just going to put a piece of tape on all the parts which are on the passenger side. So at the end, when we put everything back, we know where it goes. And something that we also notice now after taking the airbox filter out is that there's a lot of room up here and specifically in the back, which kind of gives us more hope when we take this engine out. Because Diego, the guy from the Underbody shop, told us that he would like to keep the subframe in, even though it is damaged. We have the new one here already, but he would like to have it in whilst he's doing the framework, because it just gives the entire car more stability whilst he's doing the framework. So hopefully this can stay in if we have more room in here, so we can kind of lift it up at an angle. And also what we notice here on the side is that this relay here, which is for the fan in the front, is kind of broken here on the side. It's just a holder, so we're definitely going to need this part new. But we're going to unplug everything here, which we can see, so we can have more room, because everything needs to be disconnected from the frame and everything so we can pull this engine out. So we're going to start here, plugging everything out so we can finally get this engine out. And since life is a learning curve and this is something completely new to me, which I'm completely interested in doing, and I just love learning facts about this, so I just want to give you guys some info about this. As you just saw, we removed the intake, the filter for this. This is where the fresh air gets sucked into. Then in here, these are the two turbos. Since it is a twin turbo, there it pushes the air in here into the intercoolers, which cools down the air and sends it into the engine. And then up here we have the upstream oxygen sensors and then the downstream oxygen sensors in the cats. And this is just where the exhaust sits. And something we also just noticed is that the exhaust manifold sits on the inside, because on older cars like Volkswagen and whatever, also normal V8s, which are not turbocharged or supercharged, the manifolds were on the bottom and the exhaust just went down and not from the top up here. And also we noticed that the alternator sits up here under all these hoses. So yeah, and also on this intercooler, we notice this sensor down here is snapped off from the incident, but luckily it's not the harness, it's just the sensor. So this is probably a cheap part, which we can also just get and switch this out, which is a lot better than having the harness broken. So that's also really good. And by the way, since this entire thing in the front is open, such as the belt and stuff, we will be doing kind of a full service on the car, so it's going to be even better than what we have right now. So we're going to switch out the entire belt, because this is way easier than trying to get it from the top, and also do an oil change and all stuff like that. So it's going to be in even better condition than it was or is right now. And by the way, when dealers do services like this for the belt, most of the times or sometimes, since there's coolers right here in front of it, they don't have any space to get to the belt. So most of the time they will remove the bumper and stuff like that, just like this is how this is in this condition, so they can actually access this belt and do a service, which also could lead to different mistakes that they make. For example, not fitting parts correctly, as we saw up here on this filter, that it wasn't installed correctly, and that, for example, that they don't put parts back correctly. So just because it's a crash car doesn't mean it's worse. Could even be better than a car that got serviced at a dealer. And this part here is a little part that's a little bit complicated. Has a clip on this top here and then a clip on the other side, which you have to go through a little hole here and kind of wedge it around until you kind of get it out, and then you have this top part out. And as you can see, now it's loose. It's just held in with one screw on the bottom, and then here around the corner, you can see it has one of these little push-in knobs, and also on the back, but this was already popped out. So it was just held in with one screw, and now it's completely loose. And just for safety, we're gonna cover up the intake, because we don't want any dirt falling in. If we take the ECU, for example, where there's a lot of dust in there, if we take it up and tape it onto here, we definitely don't want any dust or any debris in here. So just like that, it doesn't have to be perfect. Something like that, that just covers the intake is good enough. So we just decided again that we're probably are gonna take out the wires, because as you can see, this will not fold up, which we intentionally thought to do, is that we're gonna fold it up and lay it on top here. But that unfortunately won't work, but we're just gonna unclip this here. So this will remove the frame from it, and then we should be able to take the ECU out. And as you can see, we now have the little box where the ECUs sit in. Finally got that out, so we now have more room and now can fold the ECUs up without taking out all the harnesses and the wires. So we can just stick this up and now have a little bit more room to play with. And as you can see, I'm currently removing this brace because we're trying to access this so we can take these wires off, and we can only do that if we pick this up, but we can't do that because this brace is in the way, so we're going to take that off. So after taking this little brace out, we can see right here that there's no movement in here because of the little circle of the screw. And if we take a look here at this brace, we can definitely see that there's no movement in here, which means that this strut tower seems to be in an okay condition. Not okay condition, but didn't have any impact or in the incident. One thing we can see down here is that there's a little tear or whatever, but this is just glued due to the chassis leg moving. And this little gap where my finger is in between is normal, so that's nothing to worry about, just this little crack in the glue that they use, but besides that, it looks good. So we're gonna continue with this job tomorrow, so don't click off yet. This is not the end of the video. We're not even started yet, so we got a lot done today, but we're gonna continue tomorrow because it's already getting late. So yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. We're back and we're gonna continue where we left off yesterday. We're gonna start by unplugging or disconnecting these power lines where we ended up yesterday by removing this brace up here. And then after that, we're gonna move on to the ECU on this side and this coolant reservoir on this side. So we can also get more space on this side, just like we did with the ECUs on this side. And also for this, so we have everything together, not everything just flying around. We're gonna take these off and then just tie it to something like here, which you'll see in a minute. And as you can see, we also put a little piece of tape on the left one because they are probably different. And then we also know which one goes on the front and which one goes on the rear. Here, and as you can see, I just did a little double knot and these are now tucked into here, so they will not cause any problems. And we also just noticed after taking everything off here, we do have to take this one off, which isn't the biggest problem. But as you can see, if I try to unclip it here, I can't get this lever all the way back. So this means that I have to take every single plug out, which are 5, which shouldn't be a big problem, but I'm gonna do that right now. So we just removed this coolant reservoir and it barely had anything in it, which was to be expected because most of the radiators were broken, so they were leaking coolant. So that was kind of to be expected. But now we're on the AC condensing line and that just bolts off up there and there's no more pressure on it because we already released it when we took the AC condenser out. So now we're gonna move on to all of these different hoses and we're gonna start by removing this part and then also all of this. And kind of weird that this is all on the outside because we can't just take this part off and then hang it out to this side. So we have to disconnect it here, leave this here, and then we're gonna move this entire area and all of these hoses, which is for cooling and heating, which run all the way up to there. We're gonna remove those. Also gives Diego just a little bit more room to do his work here and it's just a little bit easier. So that's what we're gonna do now. And then we also just found another damaged part because right here in the corner you can see that it is definitely open and cracked. So this is also another part that we need. So right now we got everything disconnected up here and we also already tied it up to here. So we have it out the way. And now we're gonna move on to here. And this is the fuel line. And this one is just a line which we're not too sure what it goes to or what it is. It goes to the intercoolers. So not really too sure what it is. If you know, let me know in the comments down below. But we have to disconnect these two because they obviously go to the engine. And then we're gonna move on to the back here. This is for the cooling and for the heating. And then we can also take this out. And after that, we should have everything disconnected around the entire engine. And then we can move on to the bottom. So this line right here, which we're not too sure what it is kind of hard to disconnect back here. It's a weird connector, so I don't really know how to disconnect it. So we went up here and disconnected from this side because it's a little bit easier. And now we're gonna just leave it out here. So now we have this side disconnected. So now we have everything sorted out and connected up here and also disconnected. And we just decided that we are going to keep these lines back here because they just follow up to here and are not connected to anything. Everything on top and around the entire engine should be disconnected from what we see. The only thing we still have to do back here is put this little nut back on, which fell down back here, but we'll get that when we have the engine out. And now we're going to move to the bottom and remove some underbody panels and then see what we have to do from there. And as you can see, we just took off the wheel on this side because we had to take out the wheelhouse liner because that's the only way you can get this underbody panel off. So we just took out the wheelhouse liner and a couple underbody panels. And now we're trying to figure out what we have to do next, because next up we do have to disconnect the drive shaft, and to do that we have to remove the exhaust, because above the exhaust is a heat shield and above that is the drive shaft. So that's the only way we can reach that. And another thing we found out, if you take a look underneath, and is that the engine mount can be removed or disconnected without having to remove the subframe, because as we said at the start of the video, Diego from the Underbody shop wants us to keep the subframe for more support and everything. He just said that he wanted to keep it inside during the framework, and there's 3 screws or bolts back here to disconnect the engine mounts. So that's what we're also going to do, so that's kind of a good thing. And then, like I said, in the back, this is up here where the drive shaft is sitting, and this is the heat shield, and to get the heat shield off we have to remove the exhaust. So that's our next problem, is to figure out if we're going to take off the exhaust completely or if we're going to try to scoot it back, but we'll see when we get there. Next up, I'm going to remove the underbody panels, which run along here on the side and the front, so we can reach the heat shields. And then next up, I'm going to remove this one, the same thing on the other side. And also, as you can see here, this heat shield is broken. Either it's from the crash or it's from copart, from them taking it with the forklifts. If they scoop it on from the bottom, they could have damage to this, but don't really know if it is from copart, but we have to replace this anyways. So now I'm going to take this underbody panel off. And we can see that there's definitely one big hole that this was broken. So it's not that easy to take out, but it didn't really matter because it already was broken, so that's why it looked kind of aggressive taking it out. And next up, we're going to start by the exhaust, and we're going to start on the back and work our way to the front. And we're going to start by loosening the hangers, which the exhaust is hung up by, and that's just 1 bolt for each hanger, and there's 4 in the back. And then we're going to start by loosening in the front and try to push it back. And next up, I'm going to be loosening the clamps which hold the exhaust to the cap. And then after that, we should hopefully be able to move the exhaust a bit back. So as you can see, we finally got the exhaust off. It's still on in the back, or it's just kind of dangling here. Didn't get it quite on camera, but we had to kind of tug it a lot because it was stuck on the cats. Obviously, it was like on there a lot, but we pulled it back. And now finally have it off, and now I can reach these screws for the heat shield, and I'm going to start by doing that now. Well, I finally just got this heat shield off, which was kind of a pain with the entire exhaust work and everything, or like having to take the exhaust off. But finally got it off. There was a lot of dust under here, so caught a little bit with my eye, but closed my eye also like 75% through this entire process. But finally got this off, and now I can see the drive shaft connected to the gearbox. And now we're gonna look into what bolts we have to take out to disconnect the drive shaft. We kind of ran into another problem, and that's because the drive shaft, when we disconnect it in the front, it will just hang down. And since we want to roll the car, it's not that good for the drive shaft. And so we just kind of decided that we're gonna take the entire drive shaft out. So that means that we're gonna have to remove this heat shield also on the back so we can disconnect the drive shaft in the back. And then after that, I will get into the drive shaft and to start disconnecting it. So something that I just did right now is remove this underbody panel, which goes across here and kind of covers this reinforcement or the brace, which is kind of the main problem right now because that's the only thing that's holding the exhaust up right now. And the exhaust is kind of in the way the entire time. So now I just removed the underbody panels, which now gives me access to these braces or reinforcements. So now I can take this off and then we can finally get this exhaust off and have a lot more room under this car. So we just took a look at the back and it's kind of not really worth the time to do all that to get the exhaust off, because just to get the exhaust off you probably have to take off the entire rear bumper because there's a little frame that's kind of holding the entire thing back. What we're gonna do now is I'm gonna, like I said at the start, I'm gonna continue by removing this heat shield so I can get to the drive shaft, and then we're gonna hang the exhaust back up because we can't get it out at the moment. So we're just gonna tie it up at the front and then put it back on the hangers in the back, and then after that we'll see. But right now I'm gonna continue on the heat shield. Here we can see the drive shaft up here. This is what I'm gonna try to get out now, and then after that we'll see what we do next. And here you can see the drive shaft. It's a little dark down here, but this is what I'm gonna try to get out now. In the back there's no screws as you can see, so that's what we're kind of wondering right now, if it's just pushed in the back. So now first things first, I'm gonna remove this plate and probably this holder, and then I'm gonna release these screws. There's 3 that I have to undo, and then after that it should pop out, and then we'll see what it does in the back. So it's been a couple of days since we worked on the car. In the meantime, we're also on the interior, on the dashboard. But right now, the main problem is, of course, the engine. But as you may have seen in the last clip, we were on the drive shaft and finally got the front part out. But we didn't actually get the entire drive shaft out because we only have limited space. And as you may have seen, the car is obviously not on a ramp. And the entire thing is just limited. We have to work with it. It is definitely possible, but it will be hard. So what we're gonna try to do is to hang up the drive shaft. I know it's not the best for it, but it's what we have to do right now, but we'll see when we get there. So we have that disconnected, and right now the main problem is how to get this engine out, because we do need the subframe when Diego does the entire bodywork and stuff like that. This chassis leg is bent, so we don't know if we're gonna swap it out or try bending it, but we're definitely gonna try bending it because this entire part up here is bent a little bit. So that's why we need the subframe, because it needs the stability if we want to pull it to bend it back. So that's why we need the subframe. So what we're thinking right now is, if you take a look down here, is that we're going to disconnect all the components down here, like the sway bar and the entire steering rack, because it just makes everything a little bit easier. And as you may have seen down here, this is bent from the steering rack and also this from the sway bar. And that's also another reason why the airbags on the inside opened up on the right side, because as you can see on this right side there is damage on the control arms and stuff like that, which probably means that the car kind of tipped over or hit something on this side, and that's the reason why the airbags on the left side opened up, because the car tilted, and obviously then for the safety the airbags open on that side. So what we're going to try to do is disconnect all of these arms down here, as I said, the sway bar and the steering rack, because we need the subframe. So we're going to disconnect everything, and also what we're going to do is take out the entire sway bar down here so we have space to take it out completely. So yeah, as I've said, disconnect everything from the subframe so we have space, leave the subframe on the engine, take the engine out to the front, and then when the engine is in the air we're going to take down the subframe, and then take the engine away, put the subframe back, and then we can hopefully send it back to Diego. But that's something we'll have to see in the future when we get there. But as of right now, yeah, I'm gonna have to do the sway bar, and then we're gonna work on the drive shafts down here, because these also obviously have to be connected because this is an X-drive or 4-wheel drive. So this is also something that's going to be a little bit complicated to get this out. This side is only stuck into the differential, but the other side is connected with 4 bolts. So that shouldn't be the biggest problem, but that's what we're going to get started on, is by taking a lot of components off. So we're going to probably get started with the sway bar. And as you can see, this one definitely took a big of a hit, and this used to be straight, and we're definitely gonna have to buy a new one for this. But yeah, let's move on to the other side. And here's the other side, and here you can see that this one's completely straight, and this is what it's supposed to look like. But now I'm gonna work on this one because we just need this entire space, so I'm gonna take this one out, and after that we can move on to the sway bar. And since this sway bar is an active one, which could quite literally turn the entire car, or like a Maybach can bounce the car if it has it programmed, it has a very thick wire here and a holder here and the connector here. So we're gonna take the connector off here and also disconnect it here before we completely take it off, so it doesn't hang on this connector so we don't damage it even more. So I'm gonna start by taking this off now. So something that we just noticed is that there's not enough room right now to get the sway bar out, because we always push it against here and we can't turn it because it has all these little weird turns in it. So we can't get it out right now. So what we're gonna try to do is to get the drive shaft out, which is for the front. So then we can also maybe loosen the steering rack and everything, and then possibly take that out too. So we have more room so we can get the sway bar out. And as you can see, there was a little bit difference on both of these screws or bolts, because on that side I could completely take it off with the impact, and on this side I could only loosen it but not take it off completely, because there probably was dirt or rust or whatever, some debris in there, and then the entire bolt started turning with it. So then stop there and then do it by hand and hold the bolt. And right now, as you just saw, we disconnected the steering rack, and now I'm going to disconnect this little connector which holds the steering rack to the steering column, which is one little bolt. So we did just get it out because we turned it the other way, because when we got the steering rack loose, we thought we were gonna give it another shot. Maybe we had more room, and it looked like we did. So we turned it the other way and kind of got it out now. It's obviously really heavy because it's the active one, but yeah, glad we got this out now, and now we're gonna move on to the steering rack. And now the next step is gonna be the steering rack. We already disconnected the wire for it, and now I'm gonna just loosen this entire harness which goes across so we have space here. And as you just seen, we finally got the steering column disconnected from the steering rack back here. And as you can see, these little teeth back here, this entire thing looks rusty and dirty, and more or less looks like it just came out of a flood or whatever. But most of the people just say that this just comes from a flood damaged car or whatever, but mostly it's just from wherever the car is and the weather and stuff like that. This car came from Salt Lake City, Utah. Doesn't have to mean anything with the salt, but this is just where the car comes from. For example, our F80, probably if you would take the same thing off, it would probably look way, way better, because it's just the weather where things come from, and this is completely normal to happen. And this entire thing with the steering column is one of the reasons why the Cybertruck isn't allowed in Europe, because in Europe it's mandatory to have a steering column connected like this, and not, as we all know, the Cybertruck has it wireless, or has it with a wire and not with the steering column, everything not mechanically. So that's one of the biggest reasons why the Cybertruck is not allowed in Germany or allowed in Europe. So we finally have it out. Probably not the best clips right now because this by far probably was the hardest thing to get out just because of the entire tight space that we have in here. But this just gives the entire thing more room. Super happy that we finally got this out and also have a lot more room to work with the drive shaft up here because this one is connected with 4 bolts. And also another part that we're going to take off real quick are these little holders for the lower crash bar because they're just in the way. We could have taken them off the entire time, but we just didn't. We kind of forgot about it, but I'm just going to take them off real quick. So that's going to be a wrap for this week's video. We didn't get as much done as we wanted, but we definitely made a lot of progress. And also for us, this is a huge milestone because we got things out like the steering rack and also the sway bar, which for us, we never touched anything like this in a car. So this is a huge step for us. And again, sadly, we didn't get as far as we wanted, but that's going to be something for next week's video. So stay tuned for that. We're going to finally take this engine out. But besides that, another fact down here is the subframe. This is the main reason why you have to replace stuff like this, because as you can see, all this rust, this is because it is cracked, because it is pushed over there, because of the chassis leg. So that's the reason why you have to replace it. You can't just bend it back because it's just going to keep on rusting and it's not going to hold very long. And that's also the reason why we're probably going to have to replace the chassis leg, because it is turned over here. And since this entire thing up here is stabilized with the other side, this won't really get affected, and this only has a little bend and is not completely crushed up. So we can fix this, but this entire bottom part we're going to have to replace. And that's the entire reason why this panel, it looks like it's pushed back because it overlaps up here, but that's not what it looks like. From the outside, it just looks like the car got crunched up from the front, but it's just because the entire thing, this got turned over and this just held back, and this is all little aluminum and not really very stable. So this just gets turned easily. So that's the reason why that is up there. But that's something for another time. But yeah, make sure to like and subscribe and turn on the post notification. Drive safe and stay tuned.